Hello and welcome to a new episode of the Energy Connects podcast with me, Chiranjib Sengupta. Last December at COP28 in Dubai, the World Nuclear Association launched the Net Zero Nuclear Initiative, which boldly aims to triple nuclear energy capacity globally by 2050. In fact, while the term clean energy immediately perhaps brings to mind solar panels or wind turbines, nuclear energy today stands as the second largest global source of low-carbon electricity. So why is it that nuclear energy is often overlooked in the clean energy narrative, and how can it help accelerate the pathway to net zero? To discuss this and a lot more, I'm delighted to be joined today by a very special guest, Dr. Sama Bilbao y Leon, Director General of the World Nuclear Association. Dr. Sama, it's a pleasure to talk to you again. And thank you so much for joining us on the Energy Connects podcast.
It is my pleasure to join you again, Chiranjib. It's a pleasure.
Thank you. And to start off, if we just go back to December last year, ever since the first ever global stocktake at COP28, nuclear energy has gained a lot of prominence, and it has been recognized in forums such as the Golden Jubilee Ministerial of the International Energy Agency, this year's G7. So how is nuclear energy helping change the narrative and also speed up the journey to net zero?
And well, you're completely right. I think that in the last, I would say maybe a couple of years, 2.5 years, we've seen 180 degrees change in the way that policymakers and thought energy leaders, the finance community, and really the average person, the media, looks at nuclear. So I think that what we are experiencing is a little bit of a perfect storm. I think that many countries, we saw this in the global stocktake last year at COP28, but I think that we already saw this at COP26 in Glasgow. Countries have taken out their calculators and they are looking at how they are going to meet the requirements and the goals for meeting the Paris Agreement goals, and the math simply doesn't add up without nuclear. So that's one of the pieces of the puzzle. And of course, we are looking at energy security. Clearly, many countries want to have abundant, affordable 24/7 energy, and nuclear fits in very well. So for us, I think that as you and I have discussed in previous occasions, nuclear clearly needs to be, as many have discussed, a key piece of the puzzle. It is simply not possible to reach net zero targets in a manner that is cost effective, number one, and second of all, equitable. Making sure that nobody is left behind without including nuclear. And as you know, and we perhaps will discuss later, it's not just electricity, it's helping decarbonize other sectors of the economy that are not really easily electrified. So we can use the carbon-free steam and heat that comes from nuclear energy. So from our side, nuclear is, we are very glad that the current contribution of nuclear reactors is being recognized. As you know, nuclear right now is the number one source of carbon-free energy in OECD countries, and the second globally, only behind hydropower. So that's very important. We want to make sure that we operate these reactors for as long as it's feasible and cost-effective. But clearly, there is a need for much more nuclear. And we are working together with governments, with thought leaders, with the finance community to make that happen.
Absolutely. And just jumping in on the point that you raised about non-electricity, about other sectors, and could you talk to us about especially these hard-to-abate sectors where nuclear energy can really be a game changer in the journey to decarbonization?
Yeah, exactly. So obviously, the global efforts is to electrify things as much as possible, and that's very easy. So we will electrify, and then we decarbonize electricity, and there nuclear has a key role to play. But as you very well know, there are many sectors that do require much more than electricity. So we are talking quite closely with, for example, the metallurgical industry, steel making, for example, and many other metallurgical processes. We are talking with the chemical industry. So Dow Chemical, as you know, is already partnering with X Energy to get electricity and heat for their first facilities in Texas, in the US. And then we are looking also to support, for example, the petrochemical industry. Nuclear energy could be a game changer to help decarbonize Scope 1 and Scope 2 of the oil and gas industry, both upstream and downstream operations. So there is major opportunities there because, as you know, oil and gas are going to continue to be very important for many countries as we move forward. So it's essential if we make oil and gas as low carbon as possible. So that's where nuclear can have a very, very big role. But there is also an opportunities to decarbonize remote locations, like industrial communities that are in remote locations, or mining communities, or even normal populations that don't have an easy connection to the grid, yet they still need 24/7 abundant, affordable, clean energy. So we are looking at places in Alaska or in many places that are far away from the grid. So all those are opportunities for nuclear. For example, also hydro, fresh water. I mean, you can use nuclear electricity and nuclear energy. There is very, very efficient processes that use a combination of heat and electricity to actually produce fresh water from salt water, desalination, which unfortunately, as you know, will become a big concern as we move forward in this unfortunately more warmer climates, where perhaps access to fresh water is going to be less and less reliable. So all these opportunities, nuclear can play a role. And I do want to make sure that it's clear that this is not proposed, pipe dreams ideas. Nuclear energy today is already doing all these things. District heating is a reality in many countries. Basically, the leftover heat in a nuclear power plant can be used to power nearby populations at heat, like heat and cooling. And so this is a reality. Desalination has been done for decades, and these industrial processes are also quite feasible. So I think that nuclear offers a very pragmatic, very realistic today solution. I mean, clearly we all are doing a lot of research and development, and perhaps new and additional solutions will happen. But we need to start decarbonizing all those sectors today, and nuclear can help us today.
That's an excellent point, and especially what you mentioned about the technologies that are not, we are not looking into the future to wait for the technologies. They're already here and on the ground, and making the change happen as it goes. So what are some of the technologies that, you could list that are really helping with the resurgence of the nuclear industry?
Yeah, well, so we do have, obviously there is the traditional conventional nuclear technology, which is advanced enormously, and we continue to build water-cooled reactors. And as you know, many countries, they have an enormous demand for electricity and energy. So they need large reactors, they need many reactors. But also there's been a lot of developments in what we call small modular reactors, micro reactors, advanced reactors. And these are very exciting because in some cases, the technology itself is not necessarily radically new. I mean, we do have a number of new small modular reactors that are still water-cooled reactors. What is new is the delivery method. So basically, these reactors are smaller, they are more compact, they can be factory fabricated, and then this makes them, they are more affordable. They can be deployed faster with minimum civil infrastructure work. And as I said, if they are factory fabricated, because you are moving from an economies of scale to an economies of series, they can become more affordable and they can be used very effectively, deployed in a very short time. And then we are also looking at these microreactors that are also already a reality in some cases. I mean, we have used these very compact, they have a very long life. They typically last for 25, 30 years. And then when you don't have to reload them, you actually replace the entire reactor. So those have been used in military installations. They were used in Antarctica, in the McMurdo station to power that. So we are using that technology, these very compact reactors, for many applications. Some of them is mining communities that are far away, or industrial communities, but also for humanitarian situations, for disaster recovery, like if there is a hurricane or something like that, and we need abundant power to support the area. So these technologies are very exciting. And then we have advanced reactors, molten salt reactors, lead-cooled reactors, gas-cooled reactors. These are coming up very quickly. In the next 15 years or so, this will be available to everybody. And those bring additional opportunities because they can be customized very well to meet the needs of other industrial sectors, as I mentioned before, like for process heating or for other industrial applications.
I think that really hits home, especially when you mentioned the part about hurricanes, with North America this year set for a record hurricane season, and we just saw what happened in Houston.
My gosh, yes. I mean, and it's what we were discussing before, right? That climate change, unfortunately, is getting more obvious to all of us, and we saw this year a very early start with very strong hurricanes in the hurricane season in the Caribbean. So we really need to be prepared. It's not just do what we can to abate and to mitigate, but also we need to work with adaptation. And perhaps this is not what we want to discuss today, but nuclear technologies are doing enormous support to adapt countries to the new reality of climate change. Yeah,
absolutely. And I think one indicator of that has been that uranium as a commodity has increasingly gained in terms of market value. So what kind of demand curve are we looking at, and what are your thoughts on basically the nuclear industry also growing as well as the demand growing?
Yes. Well, obviously, you are completely right. And I think that all clean energy technologies need to look at their entire life cycle, right? It's not just, yes, we can multiply our generation by 3 times or 4 times. So that's nice. And that does require significant capabilities, and does require significant human resources and supply chains and industrial infrastructure. And certainly in nuclear, we're working to ramp that up to deploy at speed and scale. But it's very important, as you said, to ensure that we do have the fuel that is going to fuel all these nuclear power plants. So this is uranium. I mean, obviously there are other fuels. I mean, we can also use thorium, etc. But as I talked before, it's very essential that we focus on today. We can deploy nuclear today. Yes, there may be new advances coming up, but what is the immediate implementation? So World Nuclear Association produces every 2 years what is called the World Nuclear Fuel Report. I think your listeners and your readers probably are familiar with it. This is the flagship that tells you, the flagship report that provides the state of the art as far as uranium and the front end of the supply chain. So when it comes to reserves and resources, I mean, we see that there is more than enough resources to support this growth in nuclear generation. And also, we are growing to make sure that we ramp up the entire supply chain. This is conversion, enrichment, and fuel fabrication. So in reality, so there is sufficient resources, but now we need to intensify our exploration and actual extraction, because, as you know, for maybe a decade or so, there really was not a lot of need to look at uranium resources. There was a lot of uranium already in the markets. So many mining operations went into care. They were a little bit mothballed, waiting for the need to actually mine these resources, since there was sufficient uranium in the market. So this is the time. And I think that we have seen this, as you said, the markets have recognized the value of uranium. And I think that this slight increase in the prices of uranium will incentivize exploration and investment in new mining projects. So all those, I think, are good news. I think it's important to reach the sustainable price and the sustainable demand and supply that we really need to have. And in that case, one of the good news of nuclear energy is that uranium is abundant and available all over the globe. So it's not just one or two countries that are able to extract this resource, but this is a resource that is very abundant all over the world. And in fact, uranium is in many cases a byproduct of other mining resources. So when you mine gold, when you mine phosphates, when you mine some other very normal minerals, uranium is a byproduct, if you wish. So we are also working on making the most of these byproducts. And then last, but certainly not least, I think this is very important. As we are looking at research and development, but not so distant, let's not forget that nuclear fuel, when we get the used fuel out of a reactor, 95% of it is still fuel. In many cases, we have decided that we are going to simply store it for the longer term. But in many cases, we are looking at reprocessing. As you know, this is done routinely in France, in Japan, in the UK, in Russia. So basically, what we are doing is making the most of these 95% resources that do still exist in the used nuclear fuel. So by recycling this fuel, we are optimizing the uranium that already has been mined, and we can extract much more energy from the existing fuel. So I truly believe that as we move forward, many more countries are going to revisit their policies for used nuclear fuel, because they will, as France, as UK and Japan and others do, they will consider this used fuel not as a problem, but as a resource for new fuel.
That's excellent news. And like you said, there's a lot of good news to celebrate for the nuclear industry. But also one of the points, as with an industry that's poised to grow very, very rapidly globally, what are the challenges that you're looking at, especially when it comes to regulation and financing?
Yes. Well, as you said, it's great to have goals and to be ambitious with what you want to do, but obviously we need to put in place the right measures, the right policies to get there. So very good news, and we started this at the beginning, is that finally there exist energy policies that recognize the essential role of nuclear energy. So I do think that now many governments are starting to translate those energy policies into industrial policies that are much more actionable, much more implementation driven, not just goals and objectives. So we are seeing how these industrial policies are actually making a big difference. So as I said before, as far as developing the capabilities, developing the supply chains, putting in place the energy markets that actually recognize the capabilities and the value of nuclear energy in electricity and energy markets. But challenges. So one of them, I mean, I would say the two bigger challenges are, as you say, financing and regulation. I think that the finance community is still not fully aware of the opportunities that exist for investment in nuclear energy. I think that often, particularly in the OECD countries, the finance community is very familiar with the 2 or 3 not so successful nuclear projects that have not really been delivered on time and on budget. And clearly, well, we do need to fix that, make sure that future projects do get delivered on time and on budget. But unfortunately, the finance community is not as familiar with all the other projects all over the world that are being delivered on time and on budget, whether it is in China, whether it is in Pakistan, in Bangladesh, in the United Arab Emirates, in Egypt, in other countries. So we are trying to work with the finance community so they understand that new nuclear projects can be delivered on time and on budget. And we are working with them to deliver or to put together a little bit more innovative financial frameworks that distribute the financial risk appropriately among all the team players. And then, very importantly, we are working with the finance community for them to look at the entire life cycle of nuclear, because there are major and very important opportunities for investment in nuclear, not just new nuclear power plants. We were talking about mining. There is enormous opportunities for investment in mining, in conversion, in enrichment, in fuel fabrication, in the supply chain, where there is factories that are going to manufacture small modular reactors or some other parts of the supply chain. So all these different opportunities for investment to have all kinds of time frames for recovering your investment, which will meet the financial risk appetite and the timelines of different investors. So that's number one. But again, much work still needs to be done. And then the other thing is regulation. I think that we need to optimize and streamline the way nuclear reactors are licensed and regulated at a global level. Clearly, if we want to deploy all these reactors at the speed and the scale needed, we cannot take 5 years to license each and every one reactor in every jurisdiction. So the good news, I think, is many governments are also translating these energy policies into mandates for regulators to optimize and look at streamlining their licensing and regulatory processes. And we are seeing this very clearly, for example, in the United States and in Canada, where they are being given the resources and the mandate to look carefully at how to deliver nuclear as fast as needed. And very importantly, regulators all over the place, they are being incentivized and encouraged to collaborate, to work together. Thus, if a regulator in country A has done the revision and the review, the licensing of a reactor, maybe a different regulator may consider a lot of the work that the previous regulator has done and work using that knowledge, that experience for their own regulation, as opposed to starting from scratch. So we are seeing a lot of that. And at the same time, the industry is also working together among ourselves to standardize as much as possible, to work together with the issuers of codes and standards, so we can have as much as possible a standard design that can be deployed in almost any jurisdiction. In other words, we are trying to work from projects to products, right? So the regulators will have a much easier time when they are looking at something that is very standardized, that is essentially identical to what a different regulator just approved.
That's very, very well put, Dr. Sama. And finally, you are actively involved in running the World Nuclear University as its president. And I have always been intrigued because you've also had a successful, stint as an academic. So how was that transition from industry to academia? And what are your thoughts on shaping and inspiring the future leaders of the industry?
Well, this is essential. Without talented, well prepared, and fully skilled workforce, we can't really do anything in any clean energy industry. I mean, this is true for nuclear, but I believe many other clean energy industries are facing similar challenges. So for us, it's absolutely essential to inspire young people to consider nuclear energy as a career choice, as an opportunity to make a difference in the world, to actually deliver clean energy for everybody everywhere. So we are working on that and on inspiring this generation, but also to empower them, giving them the skills, technical skills, of course, but also leadership skills, communication skills, and overall know-how, and also the ability to work well with others. Because as we said at the very beginning of our conversation, the challenge and the urgency of this challenge is enormous. So no energy source can do this by itself. So I think it's important that we prepare our leaders to be collaborative leaders, team players that are going to work together with all other carbon-free energy sources. So for us, World Nuclear Association, as you very well said, we have the World Nuclear University, which is our arm, if you wish, that is working essentially on that, on inspiring and empowering this next generation of leaders. And this is a vital role for us. Also, I would say that it is very important not just working. So we are really focusing on people that are in the industry already. We are also trying to make sure that perhaps we capitalize on the skills that exist in other industries that perhaps are going to have less and less growth in the future. So, for example, if you are looking at the coal industry, so we are seeing in many countries how there is less efforts to continue mining coal or to continue building coal power plants. Well, nuclear energy, once again, offers a great opportunity. There is very easy to replace a nuclear power plant in a coal site. And then the skills and the experience and the knowledge of all those people that used to work in the coal industry can be retooled for these people to come into nuclear. So that's another area that we are working. I think is very important. As I said before, that we do not leave anybody behind, and there are many communities in the world that do depend on coal or other technologies that will not be used in the future. So for us, that's very important. And then for me, as you said, I think that one of the things that I am most proud of is all the students that are now professionals and they are leaders in the nuclear industry and perhaps in other industries, and that I contributed a little bit to bring them and to make them grow and to make them develop into the professionals and the leaders that they are today. So whether you do this from academia, which is essential, and clearly industry does collaborate very closely with academia. So whether we do this from that point of view or whether we do this on our side through World Nuclear University, it is a collaborative effort. We all need to work together. And again, it is so fascinating to see all these younger people succeed and become leaders. And then you can say, hey, I know them. I help to bring them where they are. So this is one of my most proud achievements.
Absolutely. It's a really proud moment for you and also for the industry that, it's really taking shape, not just in terms of growth, but also the human capital that it needs for the future.
Exactly.
Dr. Sama, thank you so much for your time, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. Thank you for your superb insights and your analysis.
It is my pleasure, always a pleasure to talk to you, Chiranjib, and contribute to the work that you are doing. So thank you very much for having me.
A big thank you to everyone joining us, and you can follow us on our LinkedIn and other social channels to get the latest updates from Energy Connect. I will be back with more guests from across the industry in the next episode of the Energy Connect podcast. Until then, goodbye.